One of the most common concerns among Canadian retirees is running out of money. And many Canadians are exposed to retirement messaging that emphasizes worst case scenarios and encourages higher savings targets. Today, I'm going to walk you through a framework that may help you better understand what retirement security could look like for your situation. And the answer may surprise you. Hi, I'm Caton St. Hilaire, investment advisor at 160 Wealth. I spend most of my time helping Canadians in their 50s and 60s figure out how to turn their life savings into retirement income without leaving money they earned sitting unspent on the table. And today, I'm going to walk you through a practical framework for evaluating retirement security based on your actual situation. Here's the roadmap. First, why the never run out of money question may not always be the most helpful way of thinking about retirement planning. Second, the data on what actually happens to retirees who follow traditional planning advice, and it's not what you expect. Third, a practical framework that you can use to estimate your retirement income needs. Let us start with the question itself. When someone asks, how much do I need to never run out of money? What they're really asking is, how much do I need to feel safe? And much of the retirement industry has traditionally answered that question in a similar way for decades. It's save more, spend less, work longer, delay CPP, maximize your RSP, and build the biggest pile possible. Now, to be fair, some of that advice is genuinely useful. But here's what often gets left out of the conversation. For many people, it can feel like there's no clear finish line. No moment where somebody sits you down and says, you have enough, go enjoy it. And without that conversation, most people just keep saving. Not because they need to, but because nobody told them that they could stop. Now, here's what the data actually shows. And this part genuinely surprised me the first time I saw it. Retirement planning expert Michael Kitces looked at what actually happens to retirees who follow the 4% withdrawal rule. The research found that in many historical scenarios, retirees following conservative withdrawal strategies often finished retirement with substantial remaining assets. Let that land for a second. One of the more conservative retirement spending frameworks commonly discussed, the one built to make sure that you never run out of money, in many scenarios, retirees ended up with portfolios that remained substantial or even grew over time, which suggests that many Canadian retirees ultimately spend less than they could have afforded. Some retirees may finish retirement with substantial savings that they never fully used, potentially spending less than they could have comfortably afforded. And that is a retirement planning outcome that often receives less attention. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, wait, I've spent my whole life being careful, saving more, and preparing for the worst, you're not alone. This is exactly why we help clients at 160 Wealth run the real numbers on their situation. If you want to see what you can actually afford to spend, I've put a link in the description below to book a time with me. Let me show you why the 4% rule creates this problem. Because once you understand this, it may change how you think about retirement planning. The traditional 4% rule generally assumes a 4% first-year withdrawal adjusted for inflation annually thereafter. It was designed to survive the absolute worst 30-year market stretches in history: 1929, 1966, and 1973. Historically, relatively few retirees experienced outcomes as severe as those historical periods. But the rule was built as if they weren't. So what you're actually holding is a worst-case insurance policy. And most Canadians are using their worst-case insurance policy as their everyday spending plan. That can be similar to planning every retirement decision around an extreme worst-case scenario. Could it happen? Technically, yes. Is it a reasonable way to live? Probably not for most people. Now, here's the second piece that changes everything. And many retirement projections don't fully account for this. Most planning software assumes that you'll spend the same inflation-adjusted amount every single year for 30 years. But that's not how humans work. Researchers have found that real retirement spending follows what's called the retirement spending smile. You spend more in your early 60s when you're healthy and active and when you can actually enjoy it. Spending dips in your 70s as you slow down naturally, and then it rises again in your 80s when healthcare costs take over. By their late 70s, many retirees are spending noticeably less on travel, restaurants, and experiences than they were at 65. Here's what that means for you. For many retirees, discretionary spending may provide more value earlier in retirement when health and mobility are stronger. At 65, you can travel, visit grandchildren, renovate the cottage, do the things you actually dreamed about. At the later stages of retirement, priorities and spending patterns often change significantly. Many retirement projections still rely on flatline spending assumptions, which can sometimes lead retirees to underestimate their future flexibility. But you should not build your retirement around a projection that doesn't reflect how people actually live. So what's the real number? Here's the framework, and I want you to actually write this down because most people have never seen their retirement laid out this way. Step 1. Calculate your baseline expenses. Housing, food, utilities, insurance, the non-negotiables. For most Canadian couples, this runs around $40,000 and $60,000 a year. Step 2. Add your guaranteed income, CPP, OAS, and any pensions. Here's where most people are shocked. A couple who both qualify for maximum CPP and OAS starting at 65 could receive roughly $44,000 or more per year in government benefits alone. Most people don't receive the maximum, so a more realistic combined figure for many couples sits in the $35,000 to $45,000 range. But here's the point. A significant portion of your baseline is already covered before you touch a single dollar of savings. Step 3. Calculate your gap. If your baseline expenses are $50,000 and your government income is $40,000, your gap is $10,000 a year. That's all your portfolio needs to cover the essentials. Step 4. Stress test the gap. At a 4% withdrawal rate, covering a $10,000 annual gap requires $250,000 in invested assets. Under that framework, a portfolio of roughly $250,000 plus government's benefits may be sufficient to cover baseline needs for some Canadians. Everything above that is lifestyle money, travel money, legacy money, the fun part. Now here's where I see people get stuck. They think security and lifestyle are the same question. They're not. How much I need to never run out of money is a security question. How much do I need to actually live the retirement that I actually want is a lifestyle question. And here is what most Canadians need to hear. Some Canadians may be closer to their retirement security number than they realize. They just keep working because nobody handed them the lifestyle answer. Now I know what some of you are thinking. What about healthcare? What about long-term care? And what about inflation? Fair questions. Canada has universal healthcare that covers many medical expenses. Long-term care costs are real, but typically replace other spending. You're not paying for a care facility while backpacking through Portugal. And inflation is already partially addressed through CPP and OAS, both of which are indexed to keep pace with the cost of living. While severe retirement shortfalls can happen, many retirement projections may overemphasize worst-case outcomes. Some retirees ultimately spend far less than they could have comfortably afforded, and that may change how some retirees think about retirement risk. Here's the bottom line. The question of how much money is needed for retirement security may be more nuanced than traditional planning approaches suggest. For many Canadians, retirement security may require less than they initially expect, but it still depends on more than just a single number. It's knowing your baseline, understanding your guaranteed income, calculating your actual gap, and finally giving yourself permission to spend what's left. For some retirees, the bigger challenge is not the accumulation, but it's finding the confidence to shift from building the pile to actually living off of it. And that gap between what you have and what you allow yourself to spend, that can sometimes prevent people from fully enjoying the retirement that they worked hard to build. If you want to find out what your real number looks like, your baseline, your gap, your actual spending capacity, book a time with me. The link is in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.